and his
Want the lights on?
Lights?
You want the lights?
I don't want those lights. Stand here, is that okay, Tom? Perfect. Okay.
Do you need lights?
Do you want me to have one?
No, do you need the lights?
Sure, it's up to you. Does that hurt Zoom? Perfect.
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. Good to see so many of you friendly and welcoming faces. Glad to be back after the COVID interruption, and I really don't like Zoom, so I haven't been here. But I have a lot to talk about here. It's a little different than I thought it was going to be, but more personal than I thought it was going to be. But nevertheless, that's what it is, and I can be interrupted or not interrupted, depending on what happens with you guys. And if anything touches you, feel free to bring it up. Okay. And I do not teach at the University of North Carolina. I wouldn't mind, it's a great school, but that's not me. Just starting personally, I grew up in it wasn't an abusive family. I think that word gets overused, but it was a stressful family. My dad had MS and was continuing towards death all too quickly. And my mom had Asperger's, which meant I was supplied with the basics, but not really a lot of emotional growing and understanding. My sister was called high strung. My sister was, so there was a lot of stress in the family. However, so I guess I lived with a lot of what ifs. What if something goes wrong? And enter the church, Zion Lutheran Church of the Norwegian Evangelical Lutheran Church. And they were wonderful. It was a big church. It was multi-generational, great youth program, solid education. We had to be serious about learning the Bible and learning things. And youth programs, they cherished, valued the youth, invested in them. We would work at the church on Saturdays and fix it up and do whatever we needed to do. All these old Norwegian carpenters were teaching you how to do this and how to do that. It was great. And very important was my group of friends. We had 40 people from my high school, 40 students from my high school who went to the church and graduated at the same time. It was just wonderful. And they were just lively and active and whatever. And so it was a safety net. It was, I always thought if anything goes wrong, they'll be there. The motto was, if you got it, give it. If you need it, ask for it and it'll be there. And I believe that. So then I went on to college and I was really young. So I stayed at home. I was at Wagner College, Lutheran College, please. And was majoring in theological studies in pre-seminary. And I did well in college, social successes and athletics, and I was bright enough and things were really going quite well. And I was mixing the two worlds. I would go to a fraternity party at night and on Saturday night, and then the next morning I would knock on the door next door and pick up the two little girls and take them to Sunday school. And where I was the principal at the Sunday school, and I led all these kids and still singing in the choir and playing on the church basketball team and very involved and very appreciative. I was mixing the two worlds. So, and I was very well received. When the church thought I was heading towards ministry, they were just delighted and encouraged me at every turn. So at the end of college, I went to Luther Seminary in St. Paul. And it was the mecca of those who wanted to become Lutheran pastors. And I got there and again, well received. I won a preaching prize there and academically did okay. And again, popular, did well. And I think I was especially welcomed because I wasn't the typical pre-seminary student. I mean, most of them, excuse me, were kind of dweeby, intellectual and soft and whatever. And there's a lot of talk about the feminization of the ministry, but I was not. I was out of that mold. But I left there. After a year, I had to grow up. I was too young, and I watched these fellows coming in. At the time, it was all men. Watched these men coming in, and interesting people. It was also Vietnam time, so there was a lot of stuff going on, and they were very interesting. And then I watched the men who were graduating. They looked like they had come out of a mimeograph machine. They were all the same, talk the same thing and whatever. Whoa, I'm not ready for that. So I went to New Guinea. And as it turns out, I didn't know this, but I would be teaching in a Lutheran school and teaching history and social studies and coaching their struggles football team and doing all sorts of stuff. But when I left Luther, my classmates were angry at me. How can you leave? Why are you leaving? What's going on? If I just need to grow up. No big deal. I had no animosity towards the school. It was a good school, as academically demanding as Princeton was when I got there. And only one prof came to me and wished me well. All of a sudden, something was different. I was no longer the golden boy. So then I did my thing in New Guinea and came back and wrote to various religious or theological institutions and said, I'd like to combine a career in social work and ministry. Well, Luther didn't even respond. And but Princeton did come and talk. So I wound up at Princeton and enjoyed it, demanding, fun, lots of excitement, just enriched and whatever. But then I had to register as a candidate in a non-Lutheran seminary. And I went to meet an official in the synod who had one of my ideals as a kid. And after New Guinea and all sorts of my reputation, the first thing he said to me is, why'd you leave Luther? All of a sudden, I was out of the mold. That was my first hint. So I finished it at Princeton and flirted with ministry, but got involved in social work and loved it. And then I wound up as a mental health counselor in a clinic, and all the time very active in the church, leading groups and all sorts of things. And then I got a job at Northeast Career Center, where we did career counseling and testing for ministers, candidates for ministry, ministers who were in trouble, who were getting kicked out or should get kicked out. And very actively involved, and and then all the time I saw these discrepancies. Something was wrong. Something didn't quite fit. I think the first one, two that came to me. One at Luther was when I read about the canonization process, how the books of the Bible were chosen. They were chosen years. I think it was in the first century or second century. And it was like a political caucus. I could see them, smoking cigars saying, well, I'll give you the Gospel of John, but take out the Gospel of Thomas, because then, and it was a political thing. It was the folks who wanted to retain their power. And it was so obvious that it was there. It was not a God-given a spiritual kind of thing, but it was a power grab. And there was another one too. Oh, if you read the Bible carefully, a little backtrack. I had a Pentecostal uncle, and I spent my summers on his farm. And he's ranting and raving about the Bible and saying this. And a lot of it wasn't true. It was just for him to do whatever. And I would go home and I'd study the Bible. Come back the next summer and say, hey, this isn't true. So I was serious about my biblical studies. So, but if you read the Gospels, look at the disciples who supposedly wrote the Gospels. They didn't get it. They didn't get what Jesus was talking about. You have to die. You have to grab yourself. You have to do this. He was not the Messiah, the king that they thought would come along and help them retain the power that they had gained with Jesus' growing popularity. James and John. Hey, can I be the vice president in your kingdom to come? And you don't get it. You just don't get it. And Jesus is hinting about his crucifixion, his upcoming crucifixion, and Peter fights it. The centurion or the Roman guard comes up and they're grabbing Jesus in the garden, and Peter supposedly takes his sword and whops off the guy's ear, not letting this happen. You can't have. They didn't want to lose their king. They just didn't. Okay. So then, if I can read my, then all sorts of discrepancies were coming up, and I was letting them lie. I was doing textual criticism. I was doing what these really bright and respectable professors had been talking about in theological schools, but there was something wrong. Just something did not track. And then Bart Ehrman comes along. It's in the back of my head the whole time. And along with this, some very painful experiences with the church. I was doing what the church said you're supposed to do. And I was going back to them when I needed help, and I expected help to come, and I got the opposite. Either I was ignored, or I was shamed, or I was criticized. And some very poignant, painful experiences. So then my belief system, and this is critical, was hermetically sealed in that emotional security as a child. I took it completely into myself because that was my place of safety. And I let it in. I just let it in, and it stayed sealed. But now it's getting kind of jarred open with these painful experiences that, wait a second, it's not as secure as I thought it was. It wasn't as emotionally safe for me. And over again, it kept getting open. And I started to let the discrepancies of faith, of the belief system, fit in. Oh, a big one. The New Testament was written at the time when there was a 3-tier universe. We're down here, the gods are up here, the underworld is down here, and they're screwing with us. Just who Jonah? Job. Devil and God are talking. Well, he only likes you because he's got a good life. All right. Okay, let's jerk him around. Let's see if he still has faith. If I don't, if he doesn't have all these blessings, and that's what it was like. They had a 3-tier universe with what's going on, and why is that? In addition, the world was so small then. The world to them was the Mediterranean area. It was not bigger than that. So Jesus says, no one comes to the Father but through me. Well, what about Li Ping over in Hong Kong? It just doesn't work. It just didn't work. But somehow I was allowing those discordant things in my head, and I let them slide. Bart Ehrman comes along, and he's the professor at the University of North Carolina, a biblical scholar, and a very similar path as mine. And he wrote all sorts of things, especially about the New Testament, the discrepancies between the Gospels, and Peter and Paul were in agreement on this. No, in truth, they were at odds about this. And he took seriously what it meant that it was written, that the Gospels were written generations after Jesus, and talked about how oral tradition comes in and changes the content. The Gospels are not history, and people read it. So many people read it as history. There's a billboard going down 206. It says, "Not sure what to do? Read the instructions." And there's a picture of the Bible. And, oh my gosh, I want to see that. I want to see people following all those instructions. But anyway, he talks about that, and he talks about his big one, and a very big one for me, was pain. How can you and evil and cruelty? Here we've got God who's omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, then why the heck is there all this evil and cruelty and pain in them? It just doesn't work. And, so let's do this thing that Jesus descends into hell and he wrestles with the devil and with death, and he beats it. Well, guess what? The church didn't decide that Jesus resurrected until years after the whole thing happened. What happened to him? He was resurrected. He went on to a different life. They expected him to, when he died, the disciples were shattered. Here they had a touch of power, they had a touch of popularity. All of a sudden, they were potent kinds of figures with this Jesus, this charismatic figure, and he dies on them. Well, what the heck are we going to do now? And you're scared to death. Oh, I know. The Holy Spirit came back, and he's going to come back. They expected him to come back imminently. There were actually communes that they're only hinted at in the book of Acts, but there were communes that were waiting for him to come back. Everybody kicked in all their assets, all their money, and in fact, two that didn't died on the spot. But anyway, they kicked in all their assets because they expected the world to end. And then it didn't. Well, what happened? Well, they didn't want to give up their power. So let's sort this out. So the church decided this is what happened. He was resurrected and he'll come back. Not unlike a lot of the Roman myths at the time. The same could be true of the virgin birth. How did Jesus become God? Well, it starts with the virgin birth, which also was a common myth at the time. How could Jesus be part of a man's sperm if he's holy? No. Obviously, it's a virgin that comes along, which doesn't make sense because he's born of the lineage of David. Well, David had nothing to do with this here, And so anyway, all these things, and Bart Ehrman comes along and he says, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And once I unsealed that secure chamber of my beliefs, I could see that it didn't work as well. And I could see what Christopher Hitchens talks about in God is Not Great. I'll paraphrase it, but it's the worst thing I can say about religion is that it's man-made. And it was all along. My work at the Career Center, where we worked with all these ministers, taught me, as did a lot of career theorists, that most ministers become ministers for power. They want to be heard and listened to and taken seriously. Something over 80%. There are others that I think are just wonderful, and they're in it for affiliation and caring about people, which I think is the real motive. That should be the motivation for it, but it's not true. It's power. I had a friend at Princeton who was going to be a minister, and he stuttered. I'm sorry, but what are you going to do when you have to preach? I never stutter when I preach because he assumes people will listen to him. He had that kind of motivation for going into ministry. So when Bart Ehrman says, sorry, I can't handle all this evil and stuff in the world because God is all powerful, mine was a combination of all these beliefs that I no longer had to live with the disorganization and the inconsistencies of it. Couple that with a few more hurts from the church, which blew my secure belief system sepulcher apart. And I rose from the dead. But I came out of that, and I feel a lot better. I know I'm better. I have more integrity. I'm the same person. I still care about people. I believe that there's some bigger stuff going on, a fellowship, a communion of all of us who care and want the best for the world, as well as a community of people who want the worst for the world, just want the worst for themselves. But I try to tie into that loving part and that communal part as much as I can. And there were so many big parts to this that let me just end with something that how important it is that we take seriously about those our inner chamber of safety, the things we've accepted because they were burned into us, they were fused into us with emotions. Mine was fused in with warmth and security and stress-free stuff. When I was a counselor, I was not the most orthodox counselor here, but I worked with this woman. Her name was Lucille. She's long dead. And she was a wonderful woman. Had gotten beaten up in so many different areas of her life and was working hard as a mother and lived in the ghetto of Trenton and listening to opera and trying to enrich her kids in so many ways and loving them in so many ways. And she was on welfare and she came to me, I work part-time at the thrift store and I'm making like $13 a week. You think I need to report that? Okay, no, see. And she said she couldn't believe that I appreciated it. She just couldn't. She knew I had positive regard. And and she said, why do you like me? I'm dumb, fat, and ugly. And I said, well, 2 out of 3. And I said, you're fat, you can do something about that. You're ugly because you don't have any teeth, you can do something about that, but you ain't dumb. And she said, and then one day she was just talking about her life and to me, a witness to beating the odds, to taking on real hurts and becoming better for it. And I said, Lucille, there's nothing I can say. We just have to switch seats. What? Let's switch seats. I'm going to sit over there. You take the power counseling position. Really? And she reluctantly got up and did it. I took her seat and sat there, I don't know, 15 minutes or something in silence. She didn't say anything. She left. Within a month, she passed her GED. She got a job and she went and got new teeth. Blew apart this cave, this tube, this sealed tube, where she had all those beliefs about herself and all this stuff she couldn't get. Some of this journey sucked. It just did. But I'm glad. Thanks.
Yay.
I'm sorry?
So I'm just saying yay. All right, thank you so much. Now it's time for people to have Q&A time. They can ask questions. They can say how they feel about things. That was wonderful. Wonderful to hear your journey. Is anyone going to make any comments in there? If not, I have a big mouth.
I'll take both a Q or an A.
Okay.
Q,
Q. Okay, we have a Q in the back.
what do you do now? How do you feel about, religion and versus?
Thank you. Thank you.
To relieve your anxieties.
No, I don't think I need that anymore. I don't need that safety net anymore. But appreciate, love, and respect those who are faithful to the church. Wonderful people, good people. If there hadn't been, I wouldn't gotten to where it was. I knew people who just saw the hypocrisy, especially of the Catholic Church from the beginning, and they could care less. But no, and I know how important it was for me to hold myself together. So I will say nothing bad to somebody else about their faith, about their belief, or whatever. If they ask, and we get into a little intellectual entanglement, yeah, let's go. But nothing of attacking or criticizing. I appreciate the community. I appreciate those who are in the middle of it with a good heart. My mom had Asperger's. I certainly have some parts of Asperger's. We have hypocrisy sniffers. So when we hear hypocrisy, yeah, we go right in. So if you've got the strength and to express some of that, I'll go at you. But no, love and concern and appreciation. And so many of them are so wonderful to me and to each other. Don't touch it. And not more than that, I appreciate it. Q. Hey.
Sure.
Oh, No one else? Okay, I don't think you can see this, but a friend of mine sent me this. I'm gonna put it up. I don't think you can see what it looks like, but it is God up in heaven with an angel behind him. She's got a little halo. And God is saying, and he's looking over at the earth. And he is saying, I'm starting to prefer the ones who don't believe in me. And I thought that was very cute. Anyway, I wanted to mention a few things. When I was in elementary school, one of my dear friends was named Linda Robbins, and she was Lutheran. And I was not affiliated. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. It was Jewish, but they lived in the old section. The Jews moved in, and there goes the neighborhood, so they said. But I was friendly with her from school, and I wasn't raised with any religion. I was just culturally or ethnically Jewish, but I wasn't raised with religion. I don't really know very much about it. They celebrated some holidays. I didn't know what was going on, but no Hebrew school or no Sunday school or no going to synagogue. I didn't know anything about it. But I love Linda and her family. They were always so sweet and so nice. And it seemed that everybody along where they lived were Lutheran, and they went to this Lutheran church. And so I went along after school because Pastor Summers was very young and very handsome, and all the little girls, and we must have been around 9 or 10 or 11 because we were still in elementary school, just loved him. But he was a very sweet man. But they were very welcoming. I never got the feeling that I wasn't welcome when I was there playing, whatever we were doing, a part of the after school programs and everything. They were very, very generous with me. And I've always appreciated that because I've been to other situations where they were not as welcoming and not as generous as soon as they knew that I was a little Jewish girl. So you're saying how nice the people were. I will attest to that. They were very, very nice. So their families were also very nice. All the kids who were Lutheran, their families were very, very, very nice. The other thing is about ministers, and I will add teachers, because I was in the school system for a while. They should not go into ministry or teaching if they don't have a calling, because it's a very dangerous thing for all the people who need them, all the students who need them, and all the parishioners who really need them, not to have someone that has the calling, that means to do the right thing, is just, it's really not a good idea. Now, where you get all these people, I don't know, but I do think, and I always say, I've been in schools, and the teachers who were doing it the way it should be done, I consider them angels. It's a very, very difficult job, and they do it so beautifully, and the kids really really get everything they should out of their education, and usually some of their means, mine were very unorthodox the way I used to do my job, but it seemed to work very well for them because I really meant to do the right thing. The other thing is I've recently lost a friend, and we worked together all the time. We worked in construction, and his name was Neil Napolitan, and he recently died. And it's a great loss to the earth and the world to lose such a beautiful soul. And what he always used to say, and I believe it, he said, what goes around comes around. That's always in my mind. What goes around comes around. And so to try to be decent with people and to honor who they are has been a winning way of behaving in the world for me, as best that I can, because I just seem to have, I don't know, I just seem to have luck with people coming to me when I need them, doing what I need them to do for me, and in essence, I do for them what they need done for them. And it's just a very beautiful reciprocal thing, and I'm very thankful for that. And I think I have much more to say other than thank you so much for your presentation. I'm so pleased to see you. I'm so pleased to see everybody that I can see in the audience. So thanks, Art.
You reminded me of one thing, if I might add. I think I left it out here. My wonderful memories with the church, how helpful they were, how supportive they were, they're all true. I misinterpreted that. I thought it was the faith that motivated that generated that. It was not. It was the immigrant mentality. All these Norwegians were here to help everybody that comes along, to support each other, to keep things going, to do whatever. Church after that, I would say, but the faith says this. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? It wasn't there. That same kindness and benevolent and community support was there because that's what immigrants did with each other. It was not because Jesus died for your sins and you were a saved person. That's what I thought, and that wasn't the case. Takes nothing away from the positive experiences, but it just came from a different place in their hearts and lives.
Thank you, Art, for sharing what you have today. When I was a younger person, I had a similar journey, different denomination. The experience and perceptions you're describing are not unique to those who've left Lutheranism.
I'm sure.
I was a Mormon for 7 years, from 1973 to 1980. I served a full-time mission in Colorado for the church. I went to BYU. Part of that I was in Israel for 6 months and around that area. And then I came back to the United States and did the mission. But theologically, biblically, I look back at the foundation of the myth is in the garden. The fall of mankind, as it's described, as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. The need for a redeemer is based on the idea that people are innately sinful because of what happened at Eden. And I have trouble stretching my mind around that at this point. If there was no fall, if people are not innately evil, there has never been any need for a redeemer or salvation. This is what it is. But I also have no trouble with the idea of a higher power. I am not the most powerful influence in the universe. I'm not even the most powerful influence in this room. I'm perhaps the most powerful influence in this chair. But there's so much that I don't control, and there are so many powerful influences that I can look to any of them and find support. But anyway, thank you for sharing your experience. It sounds like we've traveled some parallel roads.
And
I appreciate hearing.
I've got a zillion stories, examples to your point. We had catechism and confirmation, 2 years, 3 hours every Tuesday afternoon. And took it seriously, and I'm writing it. Okay. And okay, so we confirmed 50-some kids, healthy, bright, fun kids. We each got a little New Testament, and the Bible verse that was written in by the pastor for every one of us was Romans 3:23. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Not thank God for you, for your youth, for your opportunities, for this, for letting God be active in your life. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Really? Okay. Did you have a question? Oh, I think there's.
No, exercising my hand, sorry.
Okay. I'll take it. That's because you're a fallen person. Amen.
As humans, aren't we members of the tribe, or tribal? We're tribal beings, even away from religion, even within one religion, there's different tribes, always, since beginning. So how is that religion? There's different people in different religions, inside of a religion.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I have a diatribe to give to you if you like.
I think she means that people set themselves up in opposition as mutually exclusive,
Right.
like, unfortunately, Palestinians, Israelis, in Rwanda, the Hutus and the Tutsis, that sort of thing. That there always seems to be someone who's labeled the other. or the Jews who were, you know, who've been persecuted throughout history, or Native Americans singled out.
Native Americans, for example, their tribes killed each other, but they were still Native Americans, or, you know, it's been going on. Humans have been at war since the beginning of time.
Right.
It's not just something unique to today's world. Heavy, huh?
Heavy and kind of global, you know, I think Darwin fits into this, the survival of the fittest. It's us or them. The idea of scarcity, you know, I gotta get secure myself. I can do better with the tribe. And so let's go at it. And so it's us and them. And certainly the Old Testament, if they're gonna survive, they have to take on the Amalekites and the Philistines and all these other people along the way to for their own security. Much like I found security in my safety net in the church. I don't think I answered your question.
No, well, like you say Darwin, okay, wolves have their own packs, but they'll kill other packs. Lions have their prides, you know, and then, like, humans are the same.
Right.
But maybe with religion, but they're tribal. And their basic instincts, I guess.
Well, my Norwegian tribe did pretty well for me early on.
I wanted to say one more thing that I remembered. So my friend Linda Robbins, the little Lutheran girl, would always try to tell me what was going on and about the virgin birth and Jesus. And of course, I knew absolutely nothing about this. And I would want to say that if you grew up in my household, you wouldn't have had to spend all this time getting rid of all this stuff, because you would have known absolutely zippo about all the Bible. I know absolutely nothing. And so so even at maybe 9 or 10 years old, I just said, like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because I just was not indoctrinated in any way. So there goes, how the wrong kind of, maybe it's the right kind of teaching for some people who need it, but definitely something for people to overcome. There have been many people that have come to our fellowship who are looking for this more free way of thinking, but they can't get themselves away from all the rituals and things that they so depended on when they went to their churches. And so, I guess there's a lot to say. I like our rituals. I like our candle lighting. I really do. But I could live without it. But I can understand how some people just want to cling to whatever it was they were taught. It must feel very comforting in some instances, but I don't know very much about that. When I have a death, I have nothing to rely on other than my own strength to try to get through it, because I don't have any of those beliefs. I do believe there's some other thing going on, but I can't even depend on that when it comes to something that's horrible, like, a death in the family or a loss that, can't be replaced.
Sorry, different from that, I do have troubles with the Lutheran service. At one point, I swallow hard. They say the creed at almost every service, and I believe in the Virgin Mary, born of a virgin. You say that, what on earth does that mean to you? How can you do that? It just does not track in this day and age where we see things so differently, and we know things are so different.
I wanted to say that Jerry Eno left his church in Honesdale and became a member of the fellowship because of that creed. He just couldn't sit there every single week. And when he quit, and he'd walk down Main Street in Honesdale, the main street, people who belonged to his church would actually cross the street and walk on the other side. So that, he used to say it all the time, that he just couldn't believe that people who had been his friend for all those many years would treat him that way. So, religion and people's belief systems are very difficult to understand. They could think themselves to be good Christians, and yet they would do that to Jerry. Was a very active member of our fellowship and a wonderful, wonderful man, and his wife Grace. They're both gone now. And I don't know if any of you people knew them, but they were spectacular people, spectacular. And there you go.
You triggered two more for me. One is my friends whom I went to Princeton and even Luther, a couple of professors down there now. And I told them about my journey and I was cut off, just cut off. One of whom is a Old Testament scholar, wonderful guy. He preached and he would say things that would just come inside soft-spokenly and softly, and then they explode in your head and heart and just, open up your world. Just a wonderful guy. And the Lutherans and some of the other denominations have something called the lectionary. This is the text you read for the day. This is the text from the Old Testament, the New Testament, the epistles, whatever. And they would often cite the Old Testament and read from First Chronicles 3, 1 through 7a, 13b through 21. And typically they would leave out, and God was angry. And so he had the enemy slay 700 of them that day because they did not put their armor on correctly. That's what they take out. So I asked this friend, how does that work? The first thing you learn in exegesis is do not take it out of context. How on earth can they justify taking that out? He said, I never thought of that. Much like me, stuff slid by because I had a different faith, secure system in my tune.
A few things. First, I would not cross the street if I met you on the street.
Oh, thank you. You're not a Leighton Lutheran, are you? Okay, good.
But I was confused that you described a family constellation. It sounded pretty crazy. And then later on, you said, what a wonderful early life experience I had. But then I left that behind. But I think you were talking about those teen years you had. So I was, but then you keep bringing up my mother with Asperger's, and how these three different phenomena sort of tie in confuses me, or I'd like some clarification.
Okay, well, first of all, the home was stressed in lots of ways, but there was a lot of good times too. We had a lot of fun, but the real good times was church related. And one-way connections, my mom would do the appropriate things, especially when people were looking, but she had no empathy. She was trying hard to be right and do it right, but she was not spontaneous. She could not. She was kind of screwy in the sense that when I would get scared, she would laugh. When I would be upset, she would laugh. Common with Asperger's. Well, what does that tell a kid? Meanwhile, I had people in church who, oh, gee, that must have been tough for you, Art. Really? Oh, thanks. So that's where the less ambivalent support and wonderful childhood came.
How do you feel about, that old thought, if God didn't exist, people would create him because they need that comfort, that belief that there's something, some greater good out there that will always protect them or offer them, an afterlife.
I think that's the big one. People say, well, why would Christianity be so successful if it's not true? Because I think it answers our existential problems. Big one being death. How do I beat death? Lord, there's got to be some way to beat it. Being more than we are now. How do we explain cruelty? How do we explain this? Where can I get my comfort? Where can I get this? How can I reduce this tension? And it gives us that okay, we can beat death. Come to God when you're tense. Evil? Oh, let's explain evil by saying the fall of man. We have original sin. That's where evil came from. So why do we have evil? So people say because God didn't want puppets. He wanted to give us free will. Hello? I'll take pain-free over free will. just a better life. It developed into a whole system of understanding that addresses these existential questions we have all along the way. Sometimes dangerous. Look at the Black experience, thinking that it's coming later. Beulah land is up there, and the suffering today doesn't matter so much because it's so much better later on. And you get comfort with that. I don't think it's just an old saw. I think it's really right on the money of how this stuff just took hold. Much like Jesus' popularity. The Jews were getting screwed. Rome was there, they took over, and then underneath them were the Jewish hierarchy, and they were screwing them with sacrifices and this, that, and the other. They were not nice. And these poor people, Peter or Paul, or James and John, they're dumb fishermen. They had no power, just getting beleaguered at every turn. And this Jesus comes along, speaking some other voice. Here's our chance for some power. They were just so hungry. Not unlike Luther. He came along to the same sort of environment where people were getting screwed. Sorry. I just learned. You know about indulgences and Tetzel, I guess that is indulgences. And that's one of the things Luther complained about. You want to get out of this sin? Give me 20 marks, And Luther was wrong. The church was in what they considered trouble financially. They actually said, oh, by the way, the indulgences you bought back in last year from May until November, there was a problem with bookkeeping.
Oh.
So you have to pay that again because it was never registered. Whoa! I'd be a Luther if that's the case. Look, everybody around here. Oh.
You talk about indulgences and such. I found that the Church of Scientology does something similar. When they recently revamped or re-edited a number of the earlier versions of their operating and feed-in courses. And therefore, they said, oh, by the way, you didn't go through such and such of the operating OT 1 and 2. Therefore, you have to go back and do it. And you got to pay for auditing sessions and such. And it's just another moneymaker for the Church of Scientology. So it's just a new version of an old trick.
It's man-made and we don't take seriously. It's all that means to us, all that it has set up systemically.
I'm dyed-in-the-wool Catholic for a long time, but
Like the laws in the Lamb of God.
so we never read the Bible ever.
I know.
And I went to all Catholic
Yeah.
schools till I graduated from high school. No controversy. It was,
Because the priest explains it to you.
you heard some from the priest on whatever day. Yeah. But never.
Yeah.
Never. We did not read the Bible ever.
It's a lot about control, and then Constantine comes along and says, I have a better chance at unifying this empire if everybody's Christian. Okay. Everybody has to become Christian. Becomes the law. And it became a unifying force to help his aims. I hope.
That's so.
I don't mean to offend anybody. I really hope I didn't, because the journey was sincere.
Well, I was thinking, Joni, too, because I did 12 years of Catholic school. And you did hear the Bible every Sunday for the sermon. It was always, selection. But, it was like with, the imprimatur, you had to read the Catholic version. And if you had a question, you were supposed to bring it to the priest and he would explain it to you. It was unlike Protestants or Jews. They always said were excellent students because they had to take everything apart, put it back together again. So they were taught to think, they were taught to question. Where with Roman Catholics, you went to the authority and you got what they said. But it's true, the only time you never hear the Bible, but every Sunday there would be a selection. but you were never encouraged to question, you weren't allowed to question really, you had to bring it to the pastor or whomever, you know, was in the rectory
The
to.
little things are very
explain it to
different.
you.
We had serious Bible study all the way through, but
This is the word of the Lord.
So are we finished with our Q&A, or has everybody said what they wanted to say so far? Yes? Okay. All right, thank you so very, very much. Thank you for everybody's questions and answers and input. Art, I wanted to ask you a question. I had typed and emailed you the benediction.
didn't get it.
Did you
You
get
can
it?
do I
Huh?
didn't get it. You can do it.
Oh, it could be on your phone, but okay, I'll do it
You
for
didn't
you.
do the collection yet.
Okay, it is time to extinguish the chalice. Stephen, you're the chalice extinguisher. If you'd come up, I'd appreciate it.
The acolyte. We didn't get-
Sharon,
Yes.
Stephen just said you didn't do the collection yet. Can he do that first?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Go right ahead. I'm so sorry.
We gotta pay the rent.
Yes, we do. I'm the treasurer. Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Keep the lights on.
No, it's here.
All right.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we can extinguish the chalice. I was going to read something that is usually written by the UUA about extinguishing the chalice, but this is something that Art had written quite some time ago, before COVID, when he used to come regularly. And I did email it to him, but obviously he didn't get it in time because I did it this morning because I had just realized that he wanted to do it, but I will do it for him. This is written for the Upper Delaware Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. As you leave this place, take the spirit of the fellowship with you. Embrace your friends and welcome the strangers. Do your best to love your neighbor as well as yourself. Strive to be good stewards of the resources that have been loaned to you. Remember, the earth is a treasure and should be honored and respected. Be prepared to face reality as it presents itself to you. You will have victories and failures, so bring them to this fellowship when we meet again, and we will revel in the former and support you in the latter. Until we gather again, go in peace. So
Amen.
that is our service for today, and I hope everyone enjoys whatever refreshments are there. And time for me to go. Bye,
I would
everybody.
just-
Good to see you.
I would like to say one more thing about next week. You know, if it is a choice that Fenric and Texas do a show and we don't have readings, that's fine. I just need to reach out to them because that was not the original plan. I would like you would like more concert? Yes. Okay, I'll be talking to Madeline today, so. But yeah, I bet that the original plan was, you know, doing readings and so on and so forth.
Some people would like Mother Day's readings.
Now you think Mother's Day readings, okay.
I think they would like some.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a whole, you know, but yeah, so, or, you know. Okay, whatever, I'm open to whatever, I just want to let them know what the plan is, as it originally was planned.
I mean,
So,
it is Mother's
that's all.
Day. I think we should recognize that.
Yeah,
I think if there's one thing we're good at, it's being flexible.
okay. And they'll play, and you'll enjoy them, and if you want to hear more of them, come to our house, so. Thank you. Coming to your house first? They're coming on Thursday night, they're traveling. They're coming on Thursday night and staying until Sunday, till after the service, and then they're on their way to their next.
But they're not
location.
playing somewhere else.
No, just at my house the night before, we can only fit 20 and that'll be tight. And then they'll play here in the morning, yeah. So, thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
thanks, everybody. Bye.
thank you, Sharon.
Mhm.